There's room for everybody. There's room for all opinions, and let's just be
Yeah, don't come
kind.
for me because I'm a childless person, and my children are my shoes and my bags. They're so
Well,
cute.
if you say that and then you do this,
What's
yeah,
wrong with doing this?
people are going to Princess Polly. People will
Excuse
come
me.
for you. Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Friends and Friends.
Yeah.
We're going to dive right in. What are we talking about
Before we
today?
dive in, we should talk about your bread. I just have to say, tell everybody that you're a baker now.
I'm not a
Okay?
baker.
You
Not
have to show
even,
everybody a picture of your bread. I know it.
absolutely not.
I knew it tastes good. Okay,
It
good.
did, actually.
I
It
knew it
did.
would. It looked very perfect. I could tell you that.
It did. I just have to figure out what's the best way to like store it. When you buy bread in the supermarket or wherever, it's in a bag. You could put it in your bread bin if you have a bread bin. But for
Yes.
that, like, yeah, I had to use, what do you call it, like the baking paper, kind of like make a makeshift paper bag.
See, this is why I don't bake because that just sounds very difficult. I don't even know that. What's baking paper? Let's not talk about it.
Okay. Anyway,
Yes.
let's dive in. What's on the topic for today?
So today we're going to talk about a topic that's very near and dear to Belzy because she is one. And we're just coming off of Mother's Day. So we wanted to talk about being a mom, motherhood, and like lies that we're told about becoming a mom or motherhood or the whole thing. Now, if it hasn't been clear throughout the whole podcast, I am not a mom. I'm a mom to shoes and clothes and accessories. I love these earrings. I'm not a mom to an actual human. But Belzy has a really cutie bear human that she's mom to, and I'm his favorite person. I just want to tell everybody that. Thank you. Okay.
Some things that were said in that opening are debatable, but I'm going to leave it at that. Yes, I am a mommy to a 3.5-year-old. Well, how old is he now? He's 3 years and probably like 7, 8 months.
Okay.
Wonderful baby boy. And, I think my approach was sort of thinking about lies that were sold or told about motherhood and just kind of lining that up against my expectations and what is reality or what has been reality for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, but as a non mommy, I would say for me, and this is something that I've not heard a lot of people voice in terms of motherhood, and it's something that I have struggled with for many years. And it's that I think that we're sold this lie that we're either like really sure about becoming a mom or we don't want to become a mom at all. And I think that I have teetered in the middle my entire life, and I've just had just real uncertainties. I went through a phase very early on as a teenager, I would say, where I was like anti mommy. And then I don't even know when it shifted for me from being, I don't want this ever. And I don't even know what triggered that to, I think it's something that I'm open to, but I'm just not sure if it's for me at all. I have lived in that sort of in the middle space, and sometimes it makes me feel uncomfortable because when you're having conversations with people about motherhood, they're always so certain about one side or the other, and I've always just been like, I don't know. I mean, I think babies are cute. I get along really well with them, but I'm just not, I don't know. And then there are people who have this school of thought that the reason that you're uncertain is because you haven't met the right person. And I'm not really sure if that's true either, because I'm sure that there are people that feel like they're in the relationship with the right person, but they
Choose
probably
not to
still,
have, yeah.
yeah, they're like, I'm not having kids with that person. So I don't know if that really stands up. But for me, I'm just unsure. And I haven't moved one way, moved the needle one way
One
or
way or the other.
another because
Yeah.
I don't know. And I don't know what will change my mind.
Or maybe your mind will never change. I
Yeah.
think what I would hope society would move towards actually is just room for everybody's you know what I mean? Like everybody's opinion and feelings toward being a parent.
Yeah.
oftentimes I don't know, there seems to be this versus that for the conversation.
Mhm.
So it's like you're either, moms are on one side
Yeah.
and the conversation around being a mom is one thing. And then women who aren't moms by choice or
Circumstance.
circumstance are on another side, the narrative is set one way for that subset of people. And it always seems like there's it always feels like there's no room for everyone's opinion towards the subject matter. I mean, we all come from mothers, right? And regardless of how you feel toward the topic, I think there should be room for everyone to share their opinions
Yep.
without sort of, I guess, trying to belittle or yeah, I guess belittle the other group,
Yeah.
That's what I would
But
love to see more of.
do you think that, having been a mom now, do you think you've always wanted to be a mom, or is that something that you came to as you got older?
I don't know if I thought about it much in my younger years.
Yeah.
Once I started to I was more focused on accomplishing the things that I wanted to accomplish just career wise. That was more at the forefront of my mind. And
Mhm.
then once I started to get maybe like late 20s, early 30s, I started to think about that a little bit more. And I don't necessarily know if it was something that I had always desired or if I was more influenced by societal expectations for womanhood. You know what I mean? And I say that because nobody could have ever prepared me for the level of responsibility that comes with being a mother. I don't think anyone I know ever who had experienced that for themselves were ever open to like to the point where I would truly grasp, oh dear, I would truly grasp like how huge of a responsibility it is. And I
Mm.
think also that the other part of that is when you say things like that, or you say how difficult it is or how challenging it is being a mother, that is received negatively, but it's just the truth. You know what I mean? Like, it is surprisingly so for me because like once I got pregnant and I like there was no turning back. I In my mind I'm like, all right, I'm going to be out for 4 months on maternity leave and go back to work and blah blah blah. But you just honestly don't know how once the baby gets here, once a child gets here, like how that's going to affect you. You
Yeah.
just honestly cannot prepare for that. Your hormones are doing bits and that's out of your control entirely. And
It
just
does
every
that before baby, so I can't just imagine.
and then there's just like a million and one different things. And so I ended up staying out for 7 months and would have probably stayed out longer if I could have, because I needed that time to adjust. And in many ways, I think I'm still adjusting. I'm 3.5 years in and I'm still trying to figure out like how I move forward just in general in life. I love being a mom to my son. It's the privilege of my life being his mother. And I think about this a lot. Somebody has said this to me, like at the end, when it's all said and done, and you're going to meet the maker, if you said to yourself, you have career and you have motherhood, or just whatever. If you're not having the career, just like your life in general.
Right.
And you know, if if I fail at anything, when it's all said and done, I don't want being Jackson's mother to be the thing that I fail at. Do you know what
Well,
I
you're
mean?
doing very well, so that's
Yeah.
not gonna be the case.
No, well, I'm just saying, like, these are the things that I am sort of grappling with now that I would not have anticipated for myself. I wouldn't anticipate that I would be thinking along those lines. I wouldn't
Mhm.
anticipate that the juggle would be so difficult in maintaining a career that I've worked super hard for, but also being present. You know what I mean? And being
Yeah.
a good society is just not set up for you to do the two.
Yeah.
If you want to be present and you want to, you know what I mean, like show up to all things and blah 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 blah. Especially if your support system isn't what it ought to be.
I
Yeah, there's
I hear
just
that.
the balancing act is.
It's difficult. And
Yeah.
I've heard that from a lot of, I mean, famous moms, regular moms, every mom has said that. I think that even Shonda Rhimes, who is,
Yeah.
very, very successful, says,
Mhm.
people think that she has it all together, but sometimes you have to think about when she's here in Shondaland, she's
Mhm.
not somewhere else where
Else,
her
yeah.
kids are. And that's the truth. Like, I think that society makes it very difficult for moms to balance for sure.
Mhm.
And I've heard about just how becoming a mom can also be a setback for people career wise
Mhm.
versus for a man. I think that they get the tap on the shoulder, like, "Hey, you a dad now." And,
Mhm.
they get and all the respect. And sometimes it can, I don't know, like equate for them to grow. And as a woman, you're either you go back to work and it's just like, okay, everyone's like, I guess you're gonna talk about your baby, or, like the
Mhm.
expectations are just super different, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it is beyond unfortunate. I mean, I'm not if people don't ask me questions, I don't typically share. It's just personality.
Yeah.
But I don't know, for it doesn't matter how you slice it, just where we are right now as a society, being a man becoming a parent doesn't have the same impact on his career,
Mhm.
generally speaking, as it does for a woman becoming a parent. Sacrifices are different, man. And that's just where we are. One of the things that on my list about like the idea of motherhood that I feel like is a little bit of a fib,
Okay.
that it's the most fulfilling
Good.
role. It's the most fulfilling role or fulfilling thing that a woman will ever do. And I think that that is
I
an
just want
unfair
you to know
statement.
something. If you could read what I have written here, I have the same exact thing. I just like I wrote that. That was the first thing I wrote down.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I wrote down.
And it kind of ties into the discussion we were having before, which is, why I brought it up. Because as I said, you just don't know how, you don't know. I just don't think you know how it's going to affect you.
Mhm.
So I think the statement in and of itself is unfair because the most fulfilling thing anybody could ever do is a personal choice. And it shouldn't, you know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
doesn't like that's a personal choice for everybody across the board. Man, woman, XYZ. It's a personal choice. So, you and you alone get to decide what you think is a fulfilling what makes a fulfilling life for you.
Mhm.
And it should be that way. And then as I said before, we just should have tolerance for everyone's
Yeah, I
opinion.
also think it does not create room or leave room for women who are incapable of having children. Being
Yeah.
barren is a real thing, or infertility is a real thing, or women who have experienced an illness that causes them to no longer be fertile. Those are
Mhm.
real things. Not because you're now not able to become a mom means that your world shuts down and you're less of a woman than somebody who isn't a mom. Or if you've chosen that, not to be a mom is because for whatever reason, for some people it's their own personal trauma, something that happened to them as a child, or a relationship that they've had with their own mom that's just like, it's not for me. And I think that you can be fulfilled and be an amazing person. And there are also different ways that you can nurture people in your life without being an actual mom. There,
Mhm.
there are women who are incredible role models to other young ladies in their families or people in their community. And that's how they have chosen to show up. And that's a great thing. And to make them feel like, oh, well, you didn't have your baby. So, you're not, what you're giving is not as good. And
Mhm.
I think that's a missed opportunity. And it's really it's just silly. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and which is why sometimes I wonder, because so many people struggle with infertility who actually do want to, like, there are certain that they want to be mothers, but, are unable to. I don't know if part of the reason why, at least in my opinion, I don't think that this is spoken about enough, just like the actual challenge of raising a decent human being who's going to be able to contribute positively to society,
Mhm.
right? And the challenge of navigating that on a day-to-day basis. I don't, in my opinion, I don't think people speak about that enough. And I don't know if part of the reason why is that, you know, you probably feel some type of way to complain about something that other people might struggle in a certain type of way for.
Yeah. But I also think it's because of this idea that people think this is the most fulfilling thing for you. So something that's supposedly the most fulfilling thing and the best thing you can do as a woman, how dare you complain about it? And it's just
Yeah,
like, but
that's
even it still makes it's challenging regardless.
yeah. As I said, I it is the absolute privilege of my whole life being a mother to my child, but that statement doesn't take away from the fact that every day for me is a challenge, and the balancing act is no joke. But yeah, anyway, what's next on your list?
So for me, I just think that there's also like an image of motherhood that I do not subscribe to at all. And it's kind of like this very, pure, docile, innocent, demure, like you're a mom and moms dress a certain way and act a certain way. And they don't, I remember I felt very triggered by that whole thing with Kiki Palmer and
Mm,
her partner at the
mm-hmm,
time, where when she went to the Usher concert, the guy was like, "You're a mom. Like, what are you doing?" And it's just like,
mm-hmm,
yes, she is a mom and she's a woman. And as a part
mm-hmm,
of that, she has many different sides to her. She's, multidimensional.
mm-hmm.
And their moms don't just look a particular way or behave a particular way.
Yeah. I agree. I have something similar. You know, I tying in some way somehow back to the initial point that I made. I think that yeah, so society has this idea of what a mom should be and how you should quote unquote carry yourself, right?
Hmm.
But I can't, from my experience, is you don't know left from right in like those first few months when hormones are trying to stabilize, and do you know what I mean, especially if
Yeah.
you're a first time mother, you're trying to figure out uh, you're trying to learn this human being as the human being is trying to you know what I mean,
Yeah.
understand you as well, and get
Yeah.
to know each other on earth side. And you there's I think people need to just be give grace and understand that like the person's going to need time to adjust to figure out how you want to show up, but it's your choice, right? That's
Hmm.
at the end of the day, that's the point I want to drive home, is that it's the individual's choice as to how they want to mother and how they want to show up as a mother. And if they want to, you know, wear frumpy grumpy clothes, that's for them business. And if they want to be super sexy, that's also their business.
Hello.
It's the woman's choice and how she wants to show up and how she wants to, and what works for her, how she wants to be a mother and what works for her and what makes her feel good. You know, and sometimes that takes a while to figure out, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, we should just give grace and be supportive if support is what the person needs.
Yeah, and I also think that this idea that once you become a mom, your children are your world, and the parts of you that made you who you are should disappear. I see people on the internet, like there's a girl that I follow that I guess she's been traveling, and people were commenting on her travel videos. She has 3 kids. Who's taking care of your kids? You're like traveling, and it's just like, I think she knows she has 3 kids.
Mm.
She knows very well, and she's a responsible individual, so she understands that she has somewhere to be and her kids are taken care of. She has the support, thank God for her. And so she could go about her business. And so there's no your opinion about where she is or is not is really unnecessary.
Yeah, people like to do that a lot. Is like, I
I
guess
cancel
it
them.
comes with you know, when you share your life online, that you open the gates to people giving their opinions.
But I also think that happens in families
It does.
where people are like, "Oh, where's blah blah blah?"
Yeah,
Like her
it does.
her child is with a babysitter, and you're like, "Yeah, she paid. What's the money?"
It does, even in my life. So I mentioned before about just having a proper support system and so on and so forth, which I think, if you have that, if you have your village, that'll make a lot of difference in your experience.
Yeah.
But I think, even as you said, even within families, so, if on the very few times when my son is elsewhere, just to give myself like a breather, I have an aunt. She's probably gonna see this,
Yeah.
and she says, like, should I say something like, "Every time you ship him off, gone somewhere," and I'm like, "That's like not even
That's not
true.
true.
That is not true." But it's just this idea of, well, you should be tied down to the child 24/7,
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
and I guess if you're not, if yeah, if
Are you less of a mom because
yeah,
you live your life, or for moms who decide to, get a
give themselves a
nanny
break.
or
Yeah,
an au pair? It's just
yeah.
like, listen.
You're not doing, but also I think what's interesting, or what I found interesting, was that it's the woman who my grandma gave birth to. um, they all had each other, right? So when they had kids, they were all,
Right, they're a
yeah,
supportive for each. Yep.
yeah,
As a kid, I
and
went to stay with my aunt during the
yeah,
day.
and my grandma helped raise like some of the grandkids. So it was like it was interesting. Even though she was most likely joking, to hear that remark,
Mhm.
because I'm like, what? Yeah, when y'all had your phone pitting them, when they did have support, like, you know, 24/7 support, and it's my setup is a little bit different. So yeah, um,
But also, if you wanna go about your business, you wanna go about your business.
yeah,
It doesn't make you less of a mom if you want to go about your business. At the end of the day, you're coming back home to your child, and if that's not today or tomorrow, if it's next week,
next
like,
week, then
your
yes, your
child under
business.
like, that's your child and how you want to parent them, and it's your business. At the end of the day, it's nobody else's business how you do that.
I don't know if it's all cultural or whatever, but there is sort of this idea sometimes people have that you need to be tethered to your child 24/7, or
And you
else you're not
don't.
doing it. Yeah.
Like, you're trying to teach them to be a surviving human being, and therefore, at one point in their life, they're gonna have to grow up and be without you, and
Hmm.
therefore, they will need to start to learn that early. I'm sorry.
That is, in fact, a reality. Speaking of like village, I don't necessarily think this is, I don't know if society sells you this sort of idea, or if it's something that I just kind of thought
Mhm.
would occur organically. But like, your village isn't always necessarily going to be your family or the closest
Mm,
people to you.
yes. Yeah.
That is a hard lesson to learn, super tough pill to swallow.
Mhm.
Well, for me personally, because I had this idea that, I'm from a big family, and I had an idea that my kid would get to sort of grow up amongst them the way I did,
Right, 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 right.
which has shaped a lot of my life and a lot of my outlook on things. And I thought, or I would have wanted him to have a similar experience. But circumstances and life and how things turn out, that's not where we are right now. And so I've had to curate a village elsewhere. And yeah, we're
Tough.
still learning and figuring out how to navigate. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Sometimes you have to kind of realize that maybe things unfold for the way that they do for a reason.
Mhm.
Perhaps the dynamic that existed when I was younger, and that closeness and that bond maybe doesn't exist anymore for whatever reason. People grow up, they grow apart, you process things differently, you see the world differently. And I don't know, maybe in the long run, that it was just, not something that my son needed to be around. Who knows? But at the end of the day, it hasn't. Yeah, I've had to find my village elsewhere from where I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
I mean, again, and I get it, the non-mommy in the conversation, so don't come for me. I've always had sort of like apprehension about the village with your family a little bit.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is because I have made observations, especially in my in my family, that when the younger generation started to have children, that the older generation, they seem very like nitpicky. I remember my aunt
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
used to make fun of my cousin, call her baby the book baby, because
Because she was reading a book about,
and she did things
yeah,
by the
by the
book,
book.
right? And
Yeah.
so when she went to the pediatrician, and the
Mm-hmm.
pediatrician said, your baby does not need to be given water right now because they're getting water and nutrients and blah 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 from breast milk or whatever it is you're getting,
Mm-hmm.
like they don't need water. And like my aunt disagreed with that wholeheartedly. She was just like, oh, this book baby everything. And then when the child got to the phase of having drinks, and my cousin was like, I do not want my child to start having sweet drinks, so if it's not something that I make at home,
Mm-hmm.
she's having water. And so she had water for the longest time. Like she had never had like, fruit punch or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my cousin would bring her to visit my aunt and she offers her juice, and my cousin would be like, no, she does not have juice. She has water.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, excuse me,
Problem.
book baby.
Yeah.
Book baby only has water. Book baby hasn't tried this. And oh, she doesn't eat this. And it's just like, listen, people should be free to bring up their child however they want. And I have been apprehensive. Again, I don't have children, but I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna tell you how I want to have my baby. If I tell you my baby only eats these things, I'm gonna need you to respect that. And
Mm-hmm.
if you are not going to be able to do that, then I'm sorry. They're not coming over to visit you, because I cannot trust that you're going to abide by the rules that I have laid out. And sometimes, especially, and maybe this is culturally with people from the Caribbean, they like to be like, oh, the baby needs porridge and blah, blah, blah. Porridge is a great thing. It's delicious, whatever. But sometimes there are certain things your baby is allergic to things. I remember my dad said to me, what, allergic to things? He was like, when I was young, I couldn't eat eggs and they would make me sick. And my mom kept giving them to me every day until I could eat eggs. And I was like, yeah, that don't work, because she's lucky you didn't have some sort of anaphylactic
Reaction. Yeah.
reaction to the eggs. You don't like, that's crazy. I'm allergic to shellfish, and let's not test that. Like we've already seen what happens and we're just not going to do it. And I feel like even for me, and again, I'm a grown up. And I said that to my mom at first. She was looking at me like, until like she starts seeing, like, it's because you had shrimp in America. Try this shrimp here. And it's just like, okay. And then when I like, this is the 10th time I've thrown up now. And it's just like, oh
Uh,
dear, this don't eat anymore. And I'm like, okay, yeah. Like
my
that's crazy.
my opinion on that whole like Caribbean people, I can, because I can only speak to them. That's where my experience has been. My personal opinion about that approach, where you're trying to raise your child up in one way, and because it differs from what they
Mhm.
did, it becomes an issue. And sometimes I wonder if people don't use the opportunity, like when them see I do your thing, and you know what I mean, like I don't know if that triggers something in them, and then they
It
use that
does.
opportunity.
Let
Then they
me
use
just say, it
that
does. Let me speak
opportunity
for them.
to try and criticize what it is that you're doing,
Yes.
rather than be supportive of what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? Because there's
Yeah.
no room in a FIDEM mind. There's no room. They don't exist in a world where it is possible that you can do something different from what they did.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you are, and you're seemingly succeeding at it, then they're triggered by that. And let me take this opportunity to criticize you instead of being supportive of what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm telling you,
yeah,
yes.
that's my thought process on that.
Yes, so I love a village and I love a family being in your village, don't get me wrong. But I do think that sometimes it can be the family village can be very difficult because their opinions, it's like this. I'm already receiving opinions from the outside world where if you do something in public and people feel like that's not in alignment with how they believe a mom should appear or how you should
Hmm.
parent, they have something to say and they are not mincing words. To also receive that energy from your family, I cannot.
Yeah, and I give you like, I'm not really to want to bring people like in other thing, but like a personal example. When I was trying to sleep train my son, and my living setup was different. And so there was pressure from, and I say pressure because it just felt like pressure
Mhm.
from even my son's pediatrician. It's like, yo, he needs to be sleep trained, blah, 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 blase, blase. But growing up how I did, there's no such thing because you don't have your own room and your own personal space
Right.
to, you know what I mean? You like you sometimes you have to bounce it with somebody and then until like circumstances change. So there was that concept of getting the child comfortable sleeping by themselves just did not exist
Right.
in how I grew up or the people that grew up with me or who
Okay.
were responsible for raising me as well.
Yeah.
And so fast forward now to, life is different now. We have the space. My son can have his own personal space. He was still in the crib at the time. But it's not even what was suggested. It's, I guess, the manner in which the suggestion was made about like my approach to trying to sleep train him because
Condescending. That's
yeah.
what I felt.
Then you don't agree or not. It's not even condescending. It felt more like I was being told I was doing something wrong or I was punishing or torturing him. That's what it felt like. And then you have outside pressure for say like,
Has she
yeah,
watched The Nanny?
he must be like, this is a thing to do is to get him sleep trained. And then, within the household, you have a different type of pressure to the point where honest to God, when I started feeling anxiousness and feeling uncomfortable when it was winding down to like bedtime.
Mm,
And until I said to myself, this is not supposed to feel like this. Is not supposed to be this burdensome or, just like I shouldn't feel this way. And so if this setup isn't working for us, I will tackle this a different way. And eventually, like circumstances change, the living situation changed. I moved, all this other stuff. No, he's fine. It took about a week for him to get comfortable in a room by himself.
yeah.
And once I figured out what he doesn't want is to feel like he is unable to move around. And when he's in the crib, that's what he feels like. So I got like a Montessori type bed and
Mm.
he's able to be in and out and move about his room freely. And, we're good. All right. So what's next on your list?
Okay, let me see. Now, this one is I always talk about it to you, but I don't talk about it to other people. I just think that there is a lie, a trick, a mind fuck, whatever it is about labor and delivery. I'm sorry. Nobody talks about the fact that labor, like they're like, oh yeah, it's painful, whatever. It's more than painful. I feel like as a process, you see it on TV and it's like, oh, and the baby, like for people, it could go on for days. From women who have been real with me, they have also expressed that sometimes there can be an odor in the room because of the bodily fluids.
I never experienced that.
And then I've also heard that obviously because pushing and going poo are
Mm-hmm.
related,
Mm-hmm. That
that
can happen.
that baby, you think you're pushing out a baby, but it's really a poo. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like, yeah, I
That
don't
that
I
that can
just
happen.
cannot.
So you think basically your idea of it is that it's gross.
Well, I think that's the real thing, and I think that the lie is that people make it seem like it's not that
Like it's giving birth is
it's not that
like,
traumatic, and I think it
yeah.
can be traumatic. In fact, there's one girl that I'm friends with from college who she had her first child a couple years ago, and she said she's one and done because labor and delivery was traumatic for her. And she was the first person that I've ever heard that actually said that. Because
Okay.
everybody else says you see your baby and it all goes away. And I'm just like, I don't think it does.
So I think sometimes in the movies it might be portrayed a certain way, and that might give you like a false sense of what can take place. Not to say that it doesn't happen that way for some people. However, maybe
Yes.
because I'm in the medical space then. I don't know, but
But
I'm not.
don't you think that I guess how people talk about labor and delivery and they focus on the child. And I understand like yes, the baby is the prize or whatever, but they do not talk about just how scary it can be for some people. Like there are women who have, you know, like a medical scare during labor and
And
delivery.
I'm saying I've not people I've encountered, I've not gotten that from them. Like that's not really been hidden from me from actual real life persons that I know. But even my own mother, in explaining, in giving me the story of my own birth, gave me the nooks and crannies of it all. So that part, I don't find that in my real life conversations.
Really?
No, I
I
don't.
think like a lot of people that I've spoken to, they kind of just like gloss over it. Like, yes,
No.
it's painful, but like you do what you have to do to have your baby, and it's just like, okay, I understand that, but it can be, and like I said, that girl was the first person that was like, it's traumatic. Like, I don't think I could do that ever again. That was crazy.
Yeah, no, I don't find that.
And then people say, "Well, you're also gonna forget." Like that's why you have like more children, you forget about it. The other thing is, and again, maybe I'm just like superficial. I just the thought of
Yeah.
being somewhere, stop.
Have to
The thought of
call a spade a spade. Yeah, the
the
thought of
thought
being
of being
somewhere.
somewhere
Hmm.
and like you gotta like open your legs and everyone's like, we gotta go up there. Like we need to know how dilated you are. I'm like, sorry.
I
And like
think you
and you have to sit there with your legs
you don't have to sit there with your legs open the entire time you're in
during delivery.
yes, you do. But you're not focused on like, oh, my shame, me no want nobody see me, blah blah blah. You're not focused on that. You're focused on getting the baby out and
I
safely.
agree. I
And you know, yeah. But
But from
you have
someone who's not been there, like,
yeah,
all those things are, like, going through my mind, like, the
you have the
pain.
luxury of thinking that way because you haven't experienced it, and you've been. So yeah.
It's not vanity, like, I'm sorry, if you said to me, like, "Okay, girl, open your legs right" "Sorry? No." They're like, "Why are
But
you in
you
my
did not
business?"
want me your legs when you were making the baby. So.
But that was for one person. Hello? It's
It's not what
multiple people.
how many people do you think are in the room?
Well, at least a doctor and a nurse, honey,
Mhm.
and if you got
So when you go to the gynecologist and if it's a man gynecologist you have, isn't it him and a female that's in there? It's got to be two
yes,
people because he's not
yes.
allowed to do the exam by himself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I can tell you the last time that I went, my blood pressure, what did he was like, "Ma'am, are you okay?" It was like something ridiculous, like something over 200. And he was like, "Why are you?" Before he started the process, he was like, "We're going to give you some water and give you some time to cool down. I'm not going to hurt you. Like, why are you so overwhelmed right now?"
So you spoke about the lie of what labor and delivery actually is. So I don't know if this is necessarily something that society feeds us
Mhm.
or if it this is something I thought
Mhm.
was going to happen that did not occur naturally or organically, was
Mhm.
that I would become more patient. I think most people who know me um,
Okay.
know that I'm not the most patient person. And so I thought that you know, once the child got here, that it was something that would just come naturally. Like because of it's a person you gave birth to, it's somebody you love,
Right.
it's a little
You're a
tiny
baby. They're so
person.
cute.
Yeah. And so, of course, you're just gonna have all the patience in the world. And it's quite the opposite. Um, I'm
Okay.
less patient now, I think. And I was before. And I was before. I think we were going to the opposite direction.
Mm-mm.
I just know I'm not like
Poor baby.
not, not,
That's true.
not necessarily with not necessarily with him. Even though yeah, like sometimes him get it. So, but I think because I now have this added responsibility and like
Right. And
time
you're a
is yeah
troublemaker by nature.
time like I have less and less time for any and everything.
Mhm.
I just don't have the bandwidth to deal with fuckery. Like,
I
you know?
believe you. My
Yeah.
patience was never in check to begin with. I would never fool myself into thinking that. I would think I would definitely become less patient.
I
Less.
never thought that. And I even said it to somebody like 6 months in. I was like, I thought I would have more patience. Like that would come naturally, but it didn't. Like, yeah, because time is such a precious commodity and there's not enough hours in a day. And so like nonsense, you just, there's no room for it.
Hello. I don't have time
Just
for it
like
now.
across the board. I think there are other factors that contribute to that as well. Just as being on this journey, essentially on my own, and so that makes it just a little bit more challenging, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely that brings me to my next one, which is that I think that people have a perception of how, I don't know, like how you should become a mom and that you should be married and it should be like that traditional route.
Mhm.
And so there's less tolerance for there are single moms,
Mhm.
obviously, and moms who are single due to a situation going awry, but there are
Mhm.
also moms who actually choose or
Mhm.
chose to be single moms. And there are people who are like, why would you choose to be a single mom? And it's just like, well, there are some people that they want to have a child and they are not in a
Mhm.
relationship and they are confident in their ability to do what they got to do. And so but when you don't look like what people think that the mommy you should look like,
Mhm.
I think that they are very judgmental,
Oh yeah.
and there isn't a one size fit
It's all.
all mom out there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's also on my list. And I think also living in the environment that I do now. So this is a very family oriented tone,
Hmm.
and being a single parent, you feel like some sort of pariah. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
because that's just not what you see. And I think even in how like my interactions with my son's school, and I
Mhm.
feel like there is a you are treated differently when that's my perception, at least when you're a single parent versus
I can
when
agree with that.
yeah, when you're
I
from a
can agree with that
when
for
there's both
sure.
parents involved. And I also think subsequently that might trickle down to the child as well, right? So people have this perception of you, one, because I'm a black, and also and a single mother. So they have all these preconceived notions and already start make peer judgment,
Mhm.
and so, we all have biases. That comes out, however, it comes out in the interaction between you and the leadership at the school. Not really where he's currently at now, but when we first moved here, that was the experience at the first daycare.
Mhm.
And I think that's trickled down to him somewhat. It just went all the way left. And I had to gather some people together. And then ultimately, of course, pull him
The
from the
school.
school.
Which I think is so ridiculous because there are people who are in a traditional nuclear family setting
Mhm.
and the father is there in physically, but
Yeah.
not there at all.
Mhm.
They're not helpful. They don't even know anything about their kids. They're just like,
But but you have to understand with society, I think what drives a lot of people, especially, up this side where there's not people that look like me, it's all about like it's perception, right? And so everybody just cares about what things look like to people on the outside.
yeah,
Even if you're miserable and your marriage is shit or whatever the case might be, as long as you are looking the part. I think that that's
Yeah,
what matters
yeah,
to a lot of people. I think, which I've often expressed to you, my biggest struggle with doing this by myself is just I feel like I'm always in survival mode, and it's not necessarily. It's part of it is not having a village or having the support that I would like, but part of it is also trying to sort out what the next phase of my career is going to look like as a mother. So I don't mind being a single mom because I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. My challenge with doing it on my own, as I said, is being in survival mode. And that does not allow me to parent the way that I would like to parent. But once and I'm actively working to sort things out where I am not functioning in survival mode anymore.
right.
And I would rather do things by myself than do it surrounded by people that make it harder for me.
100%.
So I don't want the village, or I don't want the partner for the sake of just saying I have those things,
Mhm.
when in fact those things are making my life
Yeah, I would cancel them. I
more
agree.
miserable. That's the take home point.
I agree 100%.
It'll be a lot of times, like when the pressure gets to me and I am, having a moment, at least, what I think to myself, at least my home is like stress free. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Nobody in a day I will for cause me peer problem.
But yeah, I would love to hear from the audience. What are some misconceptions or lies you felt like you've been fed about motherhood? Or maybe everybody is just like, no, no, I was born to be a mom. I got it. I'm still not there yet. I'm still unsure. I'm unsure girl right here.
What I would encourage everyone to just be open to is that everyone's entitled to feel how they feel about a certain topic. Everyone's entitled to their own experiences,
Mhm.
their own perceptions, and we should make room for all of it. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and
Yes.
just because someone has a different view from you,
We could all still be friends. Okay.
yeah, one's not better
And
than the other.
yep.
Mm. There's room for everybody. There's room for all opinions, and let's just be
Yeah, don't come
kind.
for me because I'm a childless person and my children are my shoes and my bags. They're so
Well,
cute.
if you say that and then you do this,
What's wrong
yeah,
with doing this?
people are going to Princess Polly. People will
Excuse
come
me.
for you. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode with us. Please share your thoughts.
Yes, and agree with me.
Okay,
I'm
we were
kidding.
doing so good. We were doing so good.